Hold on. Oh, shit.
He already did his backflip.
Oh, he's already done his backflips.
Oh, puppy, get back to the puppy.
He does backflips for dinner. He fucking loves dinner.
I'll unmute you. There we go.
Dom, what's up, brother?
Dave.
Wait, unmute. Oh, no. He's not.
What's up?
Yeah, okay.
Hey, man.
Dommy. What's cracking?
We've got like almost 10. We can almost do like, what is this? 2, 4, I can't count. 6 and 6 is 12. We can almost do a 12-way tracking jump right now online. Yeah, let's send it.
There we go, head up.
Oh, man. Right now we'd be at foot fetish.
Don't even.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to Mason earlier and on Sunday night, I was just saying to him on Sunday night, I had the alert come up on my phone or whatever through the calendar saying foot fetish tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, brutal. I mean, like first world problems, but you know, where would you rather be?
For sure. And I'd sort of like forgotten about it in a little way and pushed it out of my mind. And then that popped up and it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, dude, it is. I mean, it was a super hard decision. I know.
It was going to happen anyway.
It was a super hard decision, yeah, for him to cancel Dynamics and that, but just had to like think where it's going and look around the world to what's the measures that were being taken. And you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to expect, hey, Dimmer, to expect that it was going to get cancelled one way or another, you know, like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. Party time. Should we get started, Des, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we can get started.
Or not?
No, we can start. Do you want me to, at the moment, everyone's unmuted. Do you want everyone muted or do you just leave, like, have it open?
I don't care.
Cool.
And it doesn't bother me.
Okay, well, we can start, I think.
Okay. Like I said, I'm classically underprepared. I'm just going to go through a little bit just in terms of my journey and some stuff relating to sort of mindset and psychology, specific to, well, not really specific to flying, but that's definitely relevant to flying and skydiving. And then maybe we can just have a chat and anyone that wants to ask questions. Obviously, there's always an array of different skill levels and experience in the sport. And, you know, we've got like Kai and Dom, tunnel instructors, as an example, that will have be super proficient body flying. And then the skydiving side of things is always obviously a different element, and vice versa. So there's always a wide-ranging of experiences. So happy to just talk about whatever. If there's anything specific things anyone wants to chat about, we can go there. So, but in terms of my journey, like I've only been skydiving since I think 2014. So it hasn't been, from my point of view anyway, it doesn't feel like it's been a super long time. Pre-2014, like it's a funny thing. I sort of started trying to think about it today. And pre that, it like skydiving was not on my radar. It was not something I'd thought about. It was not something like it's on my bucket list. I've got to just go do it. It was like I'd never thought about it. It was not something that was ever really sort of in my almost worldview, you know? So it was weird. So why did I start out skydiving? How did I begin? It started with my brother. He'd done maybe stage 1 or 2, or maybe 1 or 2 stages. And he wanted to, I mean, when you do your AF, obviously, as we know, that you've got to do each stage. If you don't do a full week-long AF course, you've got to do each stage within a month of the prior stage. So he'd done 1 or 2 stages and then hadn't gone back to do another, so I had to go back to the beginning. And he obviously didn't want to do it like that again. So he wanted to do a full week-long AF course, and he just asked me, he's like, would you be keen to come along? Super randomly, never thought about skydiving. I was like, sure, fuck it, why not? Yeah, I'll come and do it. And it's funny, like at the time though, thinking back to, I haven't thought about this for a while, but thinking back to it, I was obviously pretty scared, I think, on some level, because I hadn't booked anything. And I basically needed to trick myself into committing to it in a way. So he was like, have you booked it? Have you booked it? He'd send me the website for Nagambi's website or whatever to book it. And he asked me if I'd booked it a few times. And at one point I was just like, yeah, I've booked it. And I just told him I'd booked it, hadn't booked shit. But that was how I kind of forced myself into actually committing to doing it. So on some level, I must have been like, I was clearly like, that's my interpretation anyway. I was clearly scared. Booked it, went to Nagambi and did a full week-long AF program, which was in many respects super life-changing. Met obviously a lot of people that I still see today, and a lot of, I think, what will likely be lifelong friends. And it was a real cool experience, you know. We're super lucky to have a bunch of fucking awesome AF instructors, namely like Johnny DeWitt, Stevie Williamson, Smeds, probably a few others that I'm forgetting, but those three were sort of the main instructors through the whole program. So that was super cool, you know, like, and I still see those guys, like they mainly obviously do tandems, but they're still around the sport and they still are still super involved and they still love it, you know, despite maybe a bit of burnout, but they still love it for the most part. And so it was a super special, like I reflect on that, and super special bunch of people to do it with. And it really made the experience. So it's something I kind of keep close to my mind in terms of how significant an impact you can have on people while they're learning. If you just, I think, just go, like, give them all your attention and your energy that you can and go about it the right way. So, but anyway, we went through the AF program. And, you know, I can remember probably the second or third jump, most of it was out of a 182. Some of it was out of, what aircraft do they have? The Pack, the XL. But the hardest thing for me initially beginning, I was super claustrophobic. So the most difficult thing to start, which is kind of retarded, but the hardest thing was actually getting in the plane. Getting in the plane, I was fucking super panicked. And I remember one jump, like maybe like stage 3 or 4, I literally was starting to have somewhat of a bit of a moment, like we're just like feeling super panicked, essentially like claustrophobia. You feel it's basically just super irrational thoughts. You know it's irrational, but probably like maybe override it a little bit better these days. But back then, not so much. So like 4,000 feet, we're going to height. I literally just thought about maybe I can just open the door and just launch out right now. I was just so fucking rattled. And I know if I asked Medzi, I'm sure he'd remember, like I used to take, I've been asthmatic, and so I used to take a Ventolin inhaler, which was like metaphorically like taking my teddy on the plane with me, just some sort of a like safety blanket, I think, to put me at ease. So there was some weird challenges initially, but for sure that distraction of being claustrophobic definitely overrode the initial fear of the whole actual skydiving piece. But yeah, it was a super cool experience going on from AF. I suppose what sticks in my head is the first probably 100 jumps is brutal. Like in terms of it's awesome, obviously, but it's hard, you know, like I remember sort of feeling like it was it was just such a slow process to learn. Most things you can go and, you know, if you want to learn tennis, you can go and just hit balls for fucking ages. What are you doing, Harry? What was going on there? What was that? I just looked out of the corner of my eye, see Harry. Was that a bit of a down dog or something, Harry? Anyway, most other sports you can go and hit a tennis ball for hours or whatever it is, and you can go and do a lot on repeat. And skydiving was the first, for sure, introduction for me anyway, of something that's just such a drawn out process in terms of working time. There's the briefing, there's the planning and sort of dirt diving side of it. And then from emplaning, sitting on a plane where your body goes dormant for 20 minutes or whatever, depending on what aircraft you're in, then to all of a sudden, while your body's going through like the height of the stress and anxiety and going through all those sort of feelings and emotions, to you have 60 seconds of execution time to go and do your jump. So it's a super unique sport in that way. And, you know, a good weekend typically would be if you could do 10 jumps in a weekend, like that's a good weekend, you know, like you were super stoked with 5 jumps a day was phenomenal. So that's 10 minutes of skydiving at best, like probably not even 10 minutes of let's say, I don't know, let's just say it's, 10 or 5 minutes of free fall, and let's say, just for argument's sake, 5 minutes under canopy. So it's like you've done 10 minutes of an activity in a week. Like you're not going to improve much. If you think about it in any other activity, if you give it some perspective, think about like, let's say tennis or football or cricket or whatever fucking formulaic sport. You do 10 minutes of that a week while someone else is doing 10 hours, you know, obviously you're going to see the obvious difference. So it's a super challenging period, that first 100 jumps while you're learning, or even maybe first couple of 100 until sort of the shackles come off, so to speak. And, you know, you can run camera, you can go wingsuiting, you can do whatever the fuck you want. It's super challenging. And I definitely remember like times and at this point in time, I was predominantly jumping at Ngambie when I was for sure in Victoria. I jumped in maybe Picton, and I jumped at a couple of other places within the first couple of 100 jumps, but predominantly the first 100 at Ngambie. And it's a tough ride. So I think we probably lose a lot of people in the sport through that period, I would say. And depending on the operations at the drop zone can support that and sort of smooth that over a little bit, or it can probably add to that challenge. But so within the first 100 jumps, I think, or by about the first 100, I think I'd been to Russia and done maybe 10 or 11 hours in St. Petersburg. I've been to California. Nice, Harry, work it, brother. Been to California and participated at Fly in, I think it was 2016. And I look at those sort of two things in the first 100 jumps as being kind of significant to the overall journey so far anyway. Just meeting a lot of people, meeting a lot of people in the community outside of, you know, the tiny little local drop zones that can be pretty insular. And you really get a good perspective as to the community that's out there around the world within skydiving. And then also just the time in the wind, which is obviously now with the tunnel in Melbourne specifically, is not so much the same as what it was 6 years ago. Just getting some time in the wind while you're learning and being able to do exactly what we were saying is so difficult. If you can only do 5 minutes of free fall a week skydiving, being able to, if you can go to the tunnel and do 15 minutes a fortnight, let's say, that's a huge change, because it just gives you an understanding into the wind, understanding how your body interacts and engages with the wind. And it's gonna, the way I think about it anyway, is it sort of deletes one of the apps that your brain has to process in the background of the overall sort of equation of going for a skydive. Because when we do go for a skydive, there's a lot going on. The brain is super busy. If you can get comfortable in the free fall side of things and know that I know how to go backwards and forwards, I know how to go sideways, and I feel stable in free fall, and whether it's from the tunnel, at the beginning, that's a huge advantage. Like, it's going to relieve so much stress and anxiety. And then you can focus on, okay, cool, the conditions of this, I got to fly my canopy here, you know, I got to height awareness, whatever other stuff we're focusing on. But I think about it, and it really frees up a lot of your mental sort of RAM, if you like, for other processes and other tasks. So I don't know, from then on, from the first 100, I just kept jumping a lot. And I'm sorry, by the way, if this is like way too long-winded and boring, just stop me at any point and just tell me to move on. So yeah, from the first 100 or so jumps, had been to Russia, had been to California and done that. After that, I just kept charging and trying to just consolidate, continuing I was obviously just trying to understand flying my body more. And first, I can't really remember time-wise specifically. What are you doing, Harry? Turn your mic on and tell me,
Sorry, no, Paul came in.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry, I'm
No, don't be.
intoxicated. I'm distracting everyone.
No,
I
you just look like you're
apologise.
having a really good time. It's good.
Oh, the best. Continue.
Oh, cheers.
Sounds good.
Yeah, from then I just consolidated, trying to just continue to learn and understand. Probably at about, I think 500-600 jumps is when I started to do some coaching. I think maybe began organizing events around there, maybe 600 jumps, which is it's kind of a whole nother story in itself. But that's been a cool journey up to now. It's obviously, it's funny, like they say the best way to learn something is to teach it. Or I don't know who says that, but I know it's been said by someone way smarter than me. And it's definitely true, you know, like the amount that I learn every day is flying, whether you're fun jumping or whether you're coaching is massive. And like, I suppose from 500 jumps or there, I just started organizing a few events. I'm just trying to sort of get my train of thought as to where things went from there. But I know I did a few blocks of tunnel maybe a couple of years ago. I sort of did 5 hours here and 5 hours there. So overall, I've probably only done, I think, about 26 or 27 hours in a tunnel. So I know, like, compared to Dimmer, obviously Dom, Kai, like, and so many people, like, I've done very, very, like, you know, you guys know that, like, I've done very little, essentially in comparative terms to many people. I would definitely love to be able to do more, obviously, but that's another thing. But so the blocks of time were big for me, like in terms of the block within the first 100, and then a couple of blocks after. I would kind of just go back to the sky, consolidate what I'd learned, and then I would go back to the tunnel, figure out a few new things, or get taught and learn a few new things, and then go back and consolidate. And at some point, probably at about 20 hours, I was like, okay, cool. I just feel like I just need heaps more time in the wind. For sure, that's not like there's no, like, I would need coaching the same way as everyone else. So there's no difference there. And just to be really clear about one thing, by the way, the way I think about this whole thing is we are all just students, obviously myself included. So it's very easy for a bit of a misconception for some people to think that people are either better than what they actually are, and there's a bit of a halo effect that exists where people can think if people are in a certain position that they know X, and it's just not necessarily true. So I don't profess to know everything or be anything. I'm just a student, just learning, and I just like to fly, and it's really literally that simple. So yeah, the blocks of tunnel though were I think in terms of like learning to fly my body a big deal, like, and the way that I did it. And then I just really, as I was fun jumping with all the boys and just going out and having fun flying as much as possible, I was always just really focused towards what I was wanting to learn and what I was wanting to improve on. I actually kept a list all the time. I had a list on my phone of just like little things, like little technique things that I'd want to try and work on. And so if I went to the drop zone, I was always very clear on what it is that I want to do and what I want to try and get out of it. Yeah, and so I guess from there, I started organizing events, started coaching. The coaching thing's a funny one. I'll just touch on it quickly because when I started coaching, I know that I spoke to one buddy about it more recently, and he told me a funny story, which actually I'll just repeat because it sort of articulates my point really easily. And he just said, you know, it's funny, we're around the fire having beers at Barwon one night. And he's like, you know, when you first started coaching, I thought, dude, I don't know what you're doing. Like, I don't think he's got the skills to be coaching, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't so sure. And he said, but now, he said, I see that you could see something I couldn't see. And you whether you had some sort of a vision for what you were doing. And he's like, just, it was super complimentary. And he's just like, yeah, dude, you're fucking shredding, doing super nice. And it's real good to see. And all that it made me clear on is you've kind of got to be happy to look silly in the short term because everyone's going to judge, and everyone can judge, and that's like, it's kind of like everyone's just an unconscious judgment machine, essentially. So everyone's going to do that. And if you focus on all the noise from all the other people, you'll likely never do a lot of things. So you have to get super narrow with your focus and super clear on what it is that you're wanting to do, and just move towards that with as minimal distraction as possible. So, because when I began coaching, for sure, like, it wasn't like, you know, like if it was Dom or a tunnel rat with whether it's 100 or hundreds of hours, I had not done that. So for sure, from a body flying point of view, I only had a certain level of competence, which is was not a high level of competence, which was not a super advanced level of competence. It was just, I had a basic level of capability, and I just knew I could add value to a certain group of people. So it was never any expectation that by starting running events and starting to coach was some sort of a some sort of a projection of I can do certain things, or I'm some sort of like a status signaling or anything. It was purely like my journey flying wise in the beginning. I remember like wanting to go for a tracking jump, maybe 100 jumps, 150 jumps, and you couldn't lead a tracking jump with under 200 jumps at Ngambie at the time. And that was super frustrating. So I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I've committed now. We manifested like a flat jump and we went tracking. So super fucked up, super fucking like, and I can look at it now and just be like super fucked up, but you know, that's what happened. So, and who knows how much we were actually tracking. We're like, maybe it was mostly straight down, but this is one of the things that gave me such a good insight to the need for a bit of a pathway of progression for people to get information and to learn, because otherwise it's a very realistic channel for people to take. So that was a big motivation in beginning to run some camps and events, was to try and funnel that information through and create a bit of an opportunity for people to learn, because it didn't really feel like it existed, and certainly not super accessible. And then it was just, I suppose the camps just grew into just to continuing to try and add value to the community and provide that information, and also provide a platform for coaches to be able to share their knowledge. And everyone's got a bit of a different take on things. And so what I can say to someone might not quite resonate, it might not make sense, whereas, you know, Dimmer can say it in a different way and it's going to be like, yeah, cool, it makes sense, I get it. So it's always valuable listening to just different people and getting as much input as possible and deciding on what works for you. I feel like I've been talking for fucking ages. So does it feel like that? Yeah, good. So in terms of the journey though, like, it's been a really cool one so far. Like, to skip ahead a little bit, the camps have been running for maybe a few years now. Maybe done a couple of thousand jumps. Like, I've been super lucky. I started, like, for this, I started thinking about I thought about the journey to try and get a bit of an idea of what to chat about. And I was like, you know, I've been super lucky to coach at events in Sweden, in Norway, I think in Hungary, in the US, in New Zealand, all over Australia. It's been super cool. But one of the things that came up very quickly thinking about this was, you know, the flying is one part of it, and the community is obviously a big part of it as well. Like, those times in the beginning when it's super tricky and you're not jumping, it's hard to recognize at the beginning. It's hard to recognize at the beginning what an opportunity is just to hang out with everyone and just meet different people and chat to different people. But now you appreciate the value of all those relationships and friendships over time. And there's such a fucking cool community all around the world. And it's funny, the common ground of skydiving is just a strong thread that does enable such a really beautiful community. So I feel super stoked to have been able to do that, and now doing some tandems as well, which has been super fun, and only very few, unfortunately, about maybe a couple of hundred, but that's been super fun as well. And that's been something like a lot of people have done way earlier in their journey skydiving, to me for sure. But that's been a nice just point of learning and just learning new things, and being around the drop zone all the time. And I know Harry will know this, and being around the drop zone like full time or whatever, compared to for when people are there for the weekend, it's a very big mindset shift. You just learn a lot, whether it's just you gain a different level of competency because you're doing more, there's more repetitions, but there's huge value to that. So that's been super good as well. But yeah, I can't think of really. Oh, actually, one thing I was going to mention. So that I think that's pretty much in some dysfunctional way the journey for me skydiving wise up until now. One thing I was going to say to where we are now in terms of the fact that we're doing webinars, everyone to the situation globally around the world, what's going on, that's worth us all being mindful of is obviously what's going on around the world is super challenging, most likely for all of us. But for sure, from a skydiving community, from an industry point of view, for everyone involved in the industry, for all the businesses supporting the industry and the manufacturers, the drop zones, the APF. Why are you laughing, Cezi? I can't hear.
Sorry, I'm looking at the puppy.
Oh.
Keep going. Sorry.
No, don't be. It's all good.
Every time the puppy sits up, I see Sarah's face just light up. It's great.
He's so cute. He's so cute. But yeah, it's a super challenging time. Right now, obviously, it's a challenging time for pretty much, well, unless you're a supermarket, for the majority of business. But yeah, so we want to be mindful that I don't know how this is going to look. I mean, it depends on the timeline of this whole coronavirus situation and the insane nature of us all being in this lockdown isolation, this weird predicament that we're in. If it goes on for another couple of months, a lot of businesses will still survive and it will be fine. But if it goes on for 6 months and longer, for sure, debt is cheap, so people can go into more debt and survive it over the long term that way. But it's still brutal. But it's going to be challenging. So I think trying to support in whatever way we can. I know NZ Aerosports, as an example, did a flash 40% off sale, which was a mega opportunity to pick up a cheap canopy. I know a lot of us probably can't. It's not a time to buy gear, and for sure the Aussie dollar's cooked. So it's not the best time to buy anything in US dollars. But anyway, we can support. Even to be honest, even just a message to people who drop zone owners and stuff at the moment, be fucking stressful. They will be concerned because not be able to operate, maybe because they're weather dependent, they're somewhat used to it, but it'll be pretty tough. So I think we just need to be banding together wherever we can and supporting one another wherever we can, because it's kind of tough times, to be honest. Yeah, I'm going to grab a sip of this Corona. Cheers. Because of the ranging of experience in here, does anyone want to, is there any questions in relating to the journey of whether it's yourselves or how to navigate something? Is there anything worth chatting about? Is there anything anyone wants to talk about in terms of their experience? No, cool.
I think I would like to know how you started the angle camps and how you developed it to where it is now. Because I think a lot of coaches don't know really where to start. It's really hard to understand the processes, and you've developed it to quite a big level.
Okay.
I'm interested in knowing as well what was available at the time when you started them. Who else was doing coaching? How often were the camps on? Was it just at the time?
Okay, cool. So how I started them up, I think the most important thing to mention in terms of the events and all the AWOL camps and stuff was just been more why I started to do it, and what I was most clear on throughout doing it, which was it always, my mindset towards it was, it always had to be, also actually, let me go back one point. It had to be adding the most value to the people and creating a channel for people to learn that wasn't previously available, for sure, specifically initially to Victoria. And because obviously there's events all over the place. So really it just started off just here. So that was the first sort of seed of it. It was like, it's very hard. First of all, it's super fucking dangerous moving around the sky. Like the example that I used earlier that I somewhat regret mentioning, but it can be super fucking dangerous. And, you know, there's so many changing conditions and there is so much nuance and complexity to it if you're not super aware of what's going on. And so for people, even for you, Dazza, as an example, like going out leading, it's like you'll be super fine 80% of the time, 95% of the time, let's say, as an example. But as many people that lead jumps know, like the mindset towards leading a jump and following a jump is totally different. Like I think about it like a kind of a totally different skill, because there's totally different things that are important. When you're following a jump, you can just do whatever. You just want to really like be in your slot. And that's really all you have to do for the group. It depends on the size of the group, obviously, but that's really your job. But if you're leading the jump, it's like, whether it's obviously the basics of where you're going, who else is on the load, where everyone else is going, what the conditions are, free fall, drift, blah, 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 blah. But then it's also what happens if X happens on the jump and someone flies through the group and there's a collision. What happens if I lose a visual on this person and I don't know where the fuck to go and I end up going up jump run? What happens like if someone's leading it that leads it in a tricky way and someone can fly like this? There's so much. It's funny, like as time goes on, you become more aware to how much it is that you don't know, you know? So that was the beginning to why we wanted to do them. And then we just I just sort of remained clear on trying to add value to people, trying to do that as much as possible. But also the other big key point was trying to make it mutually beneficial to the drop zone and to the participants and to the coaches. So the one big thing in my mind from the beginning was it has to be sustainable, because like everyone would love you to come and coach for free all the time, and that would be great. And I would love to have been able to do that. But I was very clear on the reality that I can do that, but how long can I do that for? How long realistically is that going to be sustainable for? Because I don't want to just do this for 6 months. So, I had to be sort of a little bit, it wasn't even brutal, just a little bit honest in the respect that to make this sustainable, it has to add value to all the participants. So we have to make sure that they're getting as much out of it as possible, and that it's, it is actually filling gaps and helping improve the development of other people. It's worth it for the drop zone, so it makes sense for them because if they're covering slots and whatever else, that there's still enough people jumping and turning planes for them to be a profitable business. Because if they're not a profitable business, then they close and we can't go skydiving there. So that's equally as important. And then the coaches to get paid, essentially, like rewarded in a way that makes it sustainable so it can continue. So those were kind of the two main points of my thinking. And then it was just continue to do it. I suppose like ultimately, like I've been pretty obsessed about flying. And so it's just consumed a lot of my attention and energy. And then it's just doing it with like-minded people, trying to maintain like a good culture towards the at the events and in terms of how we go about it, and just continuing to be open and honest and learn, and avoiding the whole the trap of like preaching to people like this is how it is, being open to being wrong. Just being like trying to create a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere for people where they feel just welcome and included, and create a good platform for them to learn and ask questions. And like the best environment from a learning point of view is one where we feel safe. So and I know for Sarah's a great example, actually. Like there was a bunch of occasions where you could tell like she would feel there was like hesitation, and you really have to manage the sort of psychology of everyone at the event to try and keep people being it so that they can focus on what they actually want to do rather than being distracted by being scared. And then in terms of how often dads are and those sorts of things, like initially, I mean, I can't even really remember, like, so it's been maybe 3 years, and what I've probably done, I really actually don't know how many events, like maybe, I don't know, 20, I actually have no idea, to be honest. I'm really just guessing. I'd have to go back and look. What was the other part of the question? Just like, can you just tell me, Daz, what else did you mention?
He asked what camps were before, but the only camps that were really before was Rob Delaney and DeWitt started it 2 years before you, and they stopped it, and then there was nothing, and then you kind of started. Yeah,
I mean, in Victoria, what was going on? Tommy was doing, I think, starting to do some things at Torquay.
He did it for a summer, yeah, and then stopped.
Yeah, but there wasn't heaps, and so there definitely wasn't like enough anyway from my point of view. The flip side to that is though, like there's been since then, like over like now 3 years later, there's been so many events. The trap is then people stop fun jumping, and everyone will come because the events obviously create a good scenario where the plane's going to be turning, and there's an opportunity just to get some good jumps in. But I feel like it created a bit of a mindset toward wanting to come and do coached events all the time rather than just going fun jumping with your mates, which I think is equally as important. So you can just go and consolidate what you're doing, and whether it's lead jumps and follow and do different things. So you're not reliant on, because it's a bit of it. I feel like it from and I've participated in a bunch of events, obviously. So from participants' mindset, it is a different, like when you're organizing to when you're not, it's a totally different mindset. So it's super important to, go get some coaching, get some feedback, and then go and consolidate. Go jump, go do some 2 ways, some 3 ways, some 4 ways, whatever, and go consolidate what you've learned. Because you can go do coaching 1 week and then the next week go get some more coaching, but you've done 10 minutes of the activity, like nothing's going to have changed. You know what I mean? So it doesn't offer, in my opinion anyway, it doesn't offer that much value. Sweet, sweet Corona.
Nice.
Yeah. But the camps have been like amazing, to be honest. The support's been amazing. And it's been it's just been a cool journey, like to think about to now. Like Flo in Maria was a real, there's been a few that have been sort of just like special where you can sort of feel like, there's something special, it's something, and I'm not saying that this is for anyone else, but just for me personally. And I know like even with Fatane, like there's something that's been special, like I don't think it was the first event, but the first event with anyone outside of Victoria was with Tane and Reed. And that was in January of like 2018, I think. And that was a super cool event. And that was it sort of created a lot of momentum. I guess is what was really clear. I could really feel there was an amount of momentum that was created from that, and then it was just trying to maintain that and build upon that, and then to I suppose the opportunity at events in WA has been super cool. The last one was again like a really good event, and yeah, then Flo and Maria last whenever it was November again was, I don't know, it's there's somewhat of an evolution there, like you can really look back to the beginning and then look to what we're doing now, and it's a cool evolution, like maybe just like it's something that I like, for me anyway, there's some sort of like it means something to me, like it's it's something I'm super grateful for to have been able to participate in, and be a part of. It's been super fun.
Hey, AK.
Yo.
Who has been your mentor? Who have been your mentors since you started skydiving, and why, and how have they helped you go through your career?
Yeah. Mentors wise, Mason has been, so that when we went to Russia, Mace was going to coach us. And so when I first went to Russia, by the way, just to give some perspective to this, it was $386 when we first looked at going to Russia. This is not what we paid, but when we first looked at going to Russia, it was $386 per hour Aussie in St. Petersburg. It was so fucking cheap. Like, we should have done more time. We fucked up. But anyway, it was so insane. And Mace was going to coach us there, but Mace, being Mason, cooked his visa, and so he couldn't get into the country. So we had to, at late notice, get someone else, and we got Mox. So anyone knows Skywalker's Christian Moxness, I know he's organised at Farm, and he's just an absolute legend. He came and coached us. I think to some degree he was like a little bit burnt out looking back on it. But from a student's point of view, for me at the time, we didn't care. And he was phenomenal to fly with, learned a heap from him. So then to go from whenever that was in the first 100 jumps of skydiving, and then to go to California to fly, he was coaching there, formed a relationship with Mox. So Mox for sure was in some ways, I don't know, he's where is he? Is he Norwegian? Is he Norwegian? Anyway, he was for sure in some ways, I suppose, like maybe a bit of a gateway to the rest of the community as well, the international community. So Mace, though, when I came back to Australia, I did some time with Mason, and Mason's been instrumental ever since. Marius has probably been another big one. Like, I met Marius in California, and I met a lot of people in California. Like, and something that I can't stress enough. Time, like in Chicago, I know like Aaron and a bunch of guys went to Chicago recently, and going and meeting people around the world is just something that I cannot amplify enough. So, but Marius was a big one. Ramsey that I met there, Fabian Ramsey. And no real reason why, Jace, like in terms of why these people, it's just like, I think it's like, why do you prefer one coach to another? It's just the connection from my point of view. Like, anyway, it's like, it's who you get on with, who you can connect with, who can understand you the clearest and communicate with you in the most direct fashion. But Marius was just someone that was way more. Marius, I can actually think of, he's been a super good mentor because he's so much more serious than I am. He's just so much, I would say, so a professional is probably a good word, but he's just a Viking, and he's military. And so California, like, I would be like maybe a little bit relaxed, a little bit too relaxed, let's say. And he would pull me up, and he would just be very clear. He'd just be like, "Oi, like, you know," he would just set the tone and create a very clear expectation as to the right way to go about things. So Marius has been a big one. And then even like, and I would say Tane has been like, I did probably 10 hours in Perth with Tane when he was working there when him and Dave were living in Perth. Tane's been a huge influence for me as well. So yeah, there's probably, to be honest, there's heaps. Like, I could think of like Luis and Claudio, and there's a lot of people that have had a huge influence, but those are three that come to my mind initially. Where's my water at?
Alex has also sent me a question. She said, what is your biggest fear if the coronavirus and the protocols around it last for 6 months or more and not allow us to jump? And what's the best plan to go back?
Like, as in back to skydiving?
As in, so just say we're out for 6 months, provided hopefully that no drop zones close and we go up for operation. What do you think what do you think is the best plan for us to go back, and what's the biggest risk to avoid, and what do you think the implications are from it?
Yeah, it's a super good question. I actually think I don't know if I saw it in the APF newsletter or something along those lines, but it's an interesting one. Like, who knows? It's like pull out the crystal ball and let's try and predict the future. In terms of, oh, that's a banging background, Harry. Fuck yeah. Fuck man, you're distracting the shit out of me. In terms of the coronavirus and the impacts to the industry, like I already sort of touched on the significance, the potential significance. I mean, the significance already, like for anyone that doesn't understand the APF, and Sarah would probably be able to give more clarity on this, but a huge chunk of the APF's revenue is from memberships, from people doing tandems. So if there's no tandem skydiving going on around the country, and there's not, then the APF gets no revenue. So obviously the APF have ample cash reserves, but it's not a good, it's never going to be a good thing. But for the APF, I don't think it's the end of the world, but for independent drop zones, it's definitely not good. It's going to be pretty hard on businesses. But from a jumper's point of view, I think there's plenty you can do and that we can do while we're not jumping. So gear maintenance is the first thing that comes to my mind, and is actually just maintaining your gear, get your gear out, and like monthly maintenance. And if you've got, I mean, I don't think anyone's got a sail canopy, but obviously that would be pulled out anyway. Repacks, being aware of your repack date. But if we're out for 6 months, like
take your PC, take your pilot sheet out of your BOC.
Yeah, for sure. Like sustain the elasticity of the BOC by taking the pilot sheet out. So it's definitely worth doing. Like if we're out for 6 months, I don't think it's the end of the world for anyone. I don't think it's, from a jumper's point of view, it's more just like the drop zones are obviously, once they fire back up, we're going to be super vigilant on all the regulations. And I'd imagine we'd all have to do gear checks again and all those sorts of things. Harry's going for a jump. That's gold. Oh dear. But I don't think it's a huge deal. It's more just like once we begin again, we just take it super slowly, small group sizes, really, really keep it simple in terms of the jump plan. Pitching high, even, you know, arguably even doing a high pull or like a hop and pop and just getting comfortable under your canopy again. I think probably that is probably where the biggest risk lies, is more the canopy side of things for people that have just downsized a canopy even. Like, let's say you've just downsized and you have 6 months off. It's like, what do you do? Like, in 6 months' time, after not having jumped for 6 months, are you safe to fly that canopy? I mean, what do? Do you need to upsize for 10 or 20 jumps and get current again and then go back to it? Yeah, maybe. Like, it's an individual decision, but there's plenty of it's definitely worth thinking about that kind of thing. I think the canopy side of things, from my point of view, is probably where majority of the attention is deserved. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Okay. Talking about new canopies, how many jumps have you done on your new layer?
Dimmer, I was literally going to drape myself in it for this. I was just like, I just want to fucking touch that thing constantly. God damn it. Man, it's funny. Like, I got it on, is it last Friday or the Friday before? I got it on a Friday anyway, like a Friday or two ago. And I took it straight to the drop zone at the Yarra Valley and did a couple of jumps on it on the Saturday. But I was also already super wary. Like, I, to be honest, thought the drop zones would already have been shut down by this stage. They were still operating, which I was kind of happy to be able to go fly the canopy. But I've only done 2, bro. So it's funny, like, I feel like there's always so many windy days. But since this whole lockdown isolation thing, the weather has been fucking primo. Like, I don't remember seeing such beautiful weather. And I don't know if that's a bit of a bias just because of the situation, or if that is actually, like, if we went back and looked at the data, if it's really true. But yeah, dude, the weather's been beautiful. I've just been checking the weather app every couple of days just to try and find out when it's going to be windy so I can go and kite it, because I'm just desperate to fly it in some capacity. Like, I don't care if I can't get lift off, but I just want to fly that fucking thing. It's beautiful.
When was your last jump?
Yeah, I think it was just under 2 weeks ago. Like, I think a week and a half ago. How long is this whole lockdown isolation thing? When did this really ramp up? Is it?
No clue. What's time?
Maybe a couple. Yeah, maybe a couple of weeks. But it's an interesting one. Like back to the whole like when we fire back up. Is there anyone in the situation where you've just changed canopies and you'd want to? You have dimmer. That's perfect. What canopy were you flying?
No, I've just downsized from 109 to 103, so it's not a massive difference. So it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I actually wrote something down to talk about in terms of the premature deployment, and it's funny. Like, part of like the sort of mindset and psychology side of things is the whole like when you get to a certain point of experience, it is like there is like that. Just it's very easy to sort of be like, oh, it'll be fine. But then I think about getting dumped out by Noodle, who has 40, well, somewhere around 4,200 fun jumps, essentially. And so there is some point at which, but mind you, was uncurrent at the time. So it's still worth thinking about at least, or it's like maybe if you've just downsized, maybe you're going to do a hop and pop instead of, taking it to the streets, and you know what I mean, like being under canopy, like putting yourself in a precarious situation, which obviously I say that a bit tongue in cheek. I certainly don't mean it in that way. But yeah, that would be something to think about for sure. Is to like go out and do a hop and pop and just get comfy on the canopy again. Like, to be honest, like on the new layer, like I've only done high pulls. Before I got my new canopy, I jumped, Coleman lent me his 79. So I'd actually done about 20 jumps on a 79 before I got my own. So it was like a new canopy, but it was not like a new canopy. But I still did 2 high pulls on it. Oh no, I did a high pull on it, and then I did a jump with like a 2A with someone else. But when I first jumped the 79, I think I did like, I don't know, 4 or 5 high pulls to start with, and that was it, to just get comfortable with it. And I just you want to fly it, and more time is good. So yeah, that'll be something to think about. Cool. I can talk. What's that, Harry?
Nothing. I'm just laughing at the edit time.
At the what?
At the never mind. Nothing.
Okay. Is it worth going into like the mindset and psychology side of things at all, or is everyone pretty cooked? I know we've been talking for probably like 45 minutes or so already, so I'm happy to touch on a couple of things briefly. I know, like, I did post a video recently that sort of went into some of my thoughts around that. So, but yeah, if anyone's interested, or if anyone, like, if we want to talk about anything else, if anyone has any questions, for sure, like for some of the guys that are like maybe less experienced, if there's any questions you guys have, like, it's a good time for us to chat about these things. And it's funny, like a lot of the time the questions might come from someone less experienced, but they're valuable to everyone regardless of the level of experience. Like, I think an important thing is to maintain a beginner's mindset in these things. So like the people that, like going back to the getting deployed, the getting dumped out by Noodle. And for anyone that doesn't know that, I don't know if I can screen share, but I can actually show you that. Can I screen share, Sarah?
I'm bad at technology. Jace, can he do that?
Yeah.
How?
You can share content. Are you on your laptop? It's down the bottom where you mute self-start video. It's to share content. It's a box with a green arrow going up.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Oh yeah, I gotcha. Okay, cool. Let me share it just to give some perspective for people that haven't seen it.
If you bring up your VLC player or whatever, get that running, and then you can hit share content, pick the window.
Oh,
Or he's going to give us the whole desktop. That'll be fine.
What else can we see?
Cheeky Chloe. Oh.
Let me get that from you.
Have you seen that before, Harry?
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
It's so good.
Yeah. So scary, bro.
So for any of like I shouldn't say it's so good. Like it's so good in hindsight. Obviously at the time there's nothing, and even with hindsight, there's nothing good about it. To be very, very clear. So just in case I confuse things with sounding too relaxed about it. It was obviously a really bad situation. It could have been really, really fucking bad. It was really bad, regardless, even though there was no incident, because all it is like an opportunity for a really significant incident further to what already happened. Just to quickly like go through it, you can see the plane on the left of the screen, hopefully. And you can see us. So we've only just launched out of the door, and we've launched, I don't know what it is, a 6-way round or something. The only reason, or the main reason this was okay and it wasn't really bad, was because we were still sub-terminal. We hadn't picked up heaps of speed vertically. And so, it wasn't going to snap my neck on opening a canopy. So in terms of how it actually was, it was totally fine. Like maybe 10,500, 11,000 feet. I was like literally looking up at my main, wondering sort of what the fuck happened. Right-hand side, saw the plane, saw the second group climbing out. I just turned my canopy off jump run, like 90 degrees off jump run, as if you're tracking. Watched the second group exit, and then spiraled down and followed the second group down. But I'll just go through it a little bit slower, frame by frame. And so Erica on with the orange, and she'll probably hate me showing this, but super experienced, insanely good flyer, has been on world records. And this is a super good example of like, it doesn't really matter how experienced we are, we're all capable of mistakes. And I think that's probably the main thing that I take out of this sort of situation. Is that as we get more experience, we can definitely get into a situation, whether we call it complacency or whatever, where we think we get into a delusional sense of security where we think we're safer than what we are, or that we're more immune to mistakes than what we are, when maybe the risk has actually increased, or it maybe has stayed the same. Maybe it has decreased, but I don't think it decreases that much. I think the majority of that's in our heads. So super experienced and just a little bit uncurrent. The conditions weren't super optimal this day. So maybe there was that. Who knows if she'd like canopy wise and the break from canopy. And this is all the more, this is a good example even to what we're talking about in terms of going back to flying post this coronavirus situation. To just tone it down, peel it right back, keep it super simple, regardless of our level of experience, small group sizes, optimal conditions, et cetera. Like literally mitigating, keeping it to as low a risk as possible. Because we're all equally capable of mistakes regardless of experience. So you can see right here, she's got my pilot chute in her hand, or my like PUD in her hand. My take on this is she's sort of unconsciously, her left hand, is it her left hand? Yeah, her left hand is sort of sliding along. Like when we're in a round, for those that don't know, you kind of typically slide along elbows, or you might go for a hip ring to pull the hips into the formation and to keep the formation together. And I think that's what was unconsciously in the background of her brain going on. She was like going for a hip ring to pull herself into the formation. You can see she's sort of like a little bit de-arched and maybe driving outside of the formation a tiny bit, and we're just going to pull herself in. And instead of grabbing a hip ring and pulling herself in, there's the pilot chute. And it's
super lucky that one in the pink catch you on the way through. Was that Shannon?
Yeah, that's Shannon. So it is super lucky for sure. So this is Dave Collins's view. So she's obviously last diver. She's off to one side. You know, the GoPro makes it look further away than it actually is. So for sure, it's super lucky. Man, there's so many points of this that are just luck. And that's why you have to treat all these shitty situations as an incident, like, because it was through no good execution on our behalf as to why this wasn't more serious. It was just pure luck. And so the big problem with when you have like near misses or when you have gnarly situations that obviously we should be trying to mitigate is recognizing the role of luck in them. Like how much of it was just luck, and then what can we do to better control the situation and minimize the risk. But like the formation luckily exited pretty nicely, so everyone's there. No one's above it. No one's corking or anything like that. And so getting stuck above the formation, everything's kind of pretty clean and tidy for the most part. So it was, and it's quick off the door, like, so we're still subterminal. So yeah, super lucky. I mean, whether it's like even pilot chute wrapping around my leg, the old Cross E3 though deployed beautifully. But yeah, you can imagine that at like a few 100 kilometers an hour and it'd be brutal. Catch you later. Okay. So yeah. So that's a super.
Have you changed your setup? Have you gone for one of those pull-outs instead?
Are you going to say a pull-out, Jace?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, I haven't gone for a pull-out, man. I've still gone. It's still the same. Would a pull-out have saved it? Maybe. I don't like. Maybe. I don't know. Like.
I don't think so. I think it still would have happened because it wasn't a pin pop. You literally pulled the pilot chute out.
Yeah, but that's the thing with the pull out. You have to pull the pin. You have to actually physically extract the pin. So you pull the pilot chute out.
Yeah,
well, technically you have to pull the pin, but the force of the pilot chute is obviously going to extract the pin anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would have. I agree. But I agree with Yari. I think it still would have happened, eh?
Yeah, I guess it just depends on at which point you'd let go. If Erica had touched it and gone, oh shit, that's not it, and let it go, or she'd held it on for longer and actually pulled the pin.
The irony of the whole thing, Jace, is though, like, out of all the people on that jump, she'd be the last person you would have expected. Like if we took a vote before the jump and said who's going to fuck something up,
Callum.
The person that's been on multiple world records is not the person we're going to choose. So,
probably, yeah, I agree with Harry. It would have been Callum, definitely.
100% would have been Callum. Just got up? No, anyway, just kidding. Love you, Callum. Yeah, so all it highlights to me is just simply that, like the experience, the level of experience is irrelevant, and that's how we should treat it. Like that's how I try to treat it in my own mind, and I think that's how we should all treat it. Essentially, like as soon as you start thinking your level of experience gives you something that everyone else doesn't have, you create the opportunity to get into a false sense of security, and you basically are tricking yourself that it's safer than it actually is. So, and as soon as you think that, you're going to put less effort into mitigating risk. So, which just further increases the risk. So that's the main thing that comes to my mind. It's just like, and it is just being humble. Like, doesn't matter how many jumps or what canopy or, all that sort of thing. It's like, maybe if you're on current, you just want to go do a few two ways. Maybe you want to be able to pitch high and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, it's very easy to underappreciate the amount of stress and anxiety that's on the brain, and maybe the body. And that when we are on current, we're just like, I think that's the big thing from being current is you get really used to that mode and you get really clear on your processes and you sort of develop a rhythm. And as soon as you become a bit uncurrent, that rhythm can fade very quickly and you might not realize. And then if you're faced with always thinking worst case scenario, if you have to think in the worst case scenario rather than just respond to it, that can be potentially a really bad day at the office. So you don't want to put yourself, like you're just exposing yourself to an absolutely unnecessary level of risk in that situation. And there's no real good reason to want to do that. All right. How do I turn off this screen sharing thing?
I'd really like to see weekend jumping come back. It seems like the other day rock up and there'll be like 10 or 15 fun jumpers ready to go and just have fun. Whereas these days it's like you only really jump when there's a camp on.
Yeah,
I've really noticed that. I think that kind of sucks.
I don't know. I feel like there's a good scene at the Gambie.
Yeah.
It's just starting to pick up again though, eh?
There's quite a few funnies out at the Gambie. I don't know. Haven't been to Barwon in ages, but
I think Barwon's, yeah.
The overall, like in general, I think it's just slowed down.
Yeah, I 100% like. I think like the guy said. I mean, I haven't been to the Gambie in ages, so I'm not the best person to do it. But like the guy said, the Gambie's been going all right, and I think arguably, the number of fun jumpers in Victoria, it's really way better for all the fun jumpers to be going to one place. Like it's way better for newer jumpers to have have everyone in one place, and that's a big part of when you're learning is having like a level of experience around the drop zone, people being able to share knowledge and all that, and people being able to approach and ask questions to is super valuable. So having a bunch of people all in the same spot is awesome. How do I get rid of the screen share, Jace? Before Harry requesting control of your shared content. No way, Harry.
Is it just me or can you see the penis in your ass?
No way I'm approving that.
How is he doing that?
Your penis.
Don't worry how I'm doing it. If you...
Oh, is it you doing?
That's me. Can everyone see that? I don't know.
Yes.
Basically, the same way is go back to Zoom and stop share.
I figured it out. Got it.
I really enjoyed that.
I still seen stuff on your desktop though, AK. I can't unsee it. You had an agile folder.
Did you see the porn folder? It's actually you must have only been able to see the porn where it's actually Sky porn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I agree with the fun jumping thing on the weekend. Though I think for people learning and like on the mindset thing. Sorry, just finally, like I think it's something that's not very well understood. So I think the biggest trap that I see is people just like wanting to unlock levels. Like it's a video game, and people just wanting to get this skill and that skill and just level up and level up and level up, and they're fixated on leveling up and learning new skills or whatever and getting competent in different things, first of all, rather than just enjoying whatever it is that they're doing and enjoying the process of learning whatever they are doing and just jumping with their mates. And then, the trap of just going to lots of events, and you see a lot of people can get really frustrated, and there's a lot of expectation, that people put on themselves. And it's just so unreasonable to put that level of expectation on yourself. And it just doesn't add any value, like not saying goals aren't good and a degree of expectation can't be valuable. But when you're getting down after a jump, and being frustrated about something really little, it's just like, it's just do more. Don't worry about it. Just do more. Just do more. Just do more. Just do more. And focus on enjoying it. And then it's like, focusing on the things that you can do to actually better support your development, which is approaching it with the right mindset. Like, we're not that there's a right mindset, but you know, how many people just deal with the stress and anxiety of a skydive by just getting way overexcited in the plane. And it's funny, you see this so much, like, it's way overexcited. And it's like, nothing's happened, dude. You're just sitting in a plane. Nothing has fucking happened right now. And you're getting super stoked. And I look at that, and all I think, my interpretation of it is, it's just people dealing with stress and anxiety and trying to relieve the stress of what they're doing, because there's a lot on them, like their brain's busy. So being able to get super quiet in your mind, and that's where, like, visualization and just planning on the ground, you know, like, we've all done this where we just go and rush a jump and it goes to shit. And you're like, yep, we should have put a little bit more effort into planning that. We should have, you know, dirt dived the exit, and we should have organized slots or whatever the situation. So it's such a unique sport in that there's such little working time for how much time might be, like an hour or 2 hours for a jump, for 45 seconds of free fall, let's say. It's a super unique situation. So to recognize that, and then to organize ourselves and utilize the time in the most efficient manners to achieve the best outcomes for ourselves, and also just with realistic expectations, you know. So because I just feel like it's a massive trap, particularly for the less experienced jumpers. I feel like it's a huge trap. Everyone wants to just go and do whatever they watch in a video straight away, and it's just not how it is.
What do you think's a good focus for, like, those first few hundred jumps, especially with tunnel kind of giving access to that, you know, that speeding up the progression quite easily, when, you know, sometimes that could be not beneficial? Like, what is a good focus, especially, you're saying, you know, those first few hundred jumps are hard, so. Yeah,
I mean, they're hard because they're hard for lots of reasons, like whether it's people to jump with, whether it's conditions that you can jump in, you know what I mean? Like, depending on your canopy size, you might not limit conditions wise. So like, yeah, there's many reasons. And then it's obviously you're limited to being able to do, whether it's belly, like vertical flat, or head up, or whatever. So you're limited in those ways as well. So for sure, it's tricky. Probably one of the biggest things for me where I recognized a real shift was, and it's nothing to do flying wise, it's actually just starting to do yoga. That was, and it probably sounds so retarded, but that was one of the most significant shifts for me personally. It was just body awareness. I don't know, obviously Kai from the circus and all that sort of stuff. You're in a totally different boat in that respect. So it's going to be different for you. You know, I don't think there's a single answer. But from, like, for me personally, it was like, for sure, body awareness from yoga, but it was also just being able to access a level of mental calm from meditation, which came from yoga, or which I was introduced from that. So that was definitely the most significant thing. And then, then it's just being really clear on what it is you're doing. So keeping it super simple and trying to, like, be really narrow on the objective. So, like, you go to the drop zone, don't work on 5 different things over 5 different jumps, just keeping it really, really simple and narrow, like the same as you would in the tunnel. You know, and just, well, actually not really the same as in the tunnel, because you can do minutes and minutes and minutes, but recognizing you might do 5 jumps today. So it's like, cool, we're going to do a few minutes of free fall or whatever it is. We're just going to do head up, or we're just going to do back tracking, or we're just going to do belly tracking, or whatever. So I think keeping the focus very narrow on the jumps is super important as well. I think even as people get more experience, they want to overcomplicate it, when sometimes the best thing to do is just go tracking straight and just being able to, like, play with the wind and notice how little things do different things, and just be able to have the mental capacity and, like, the available space mentally to notice how this feels and how that feels, and play with things, you know? Yeah. I think too often it's like, cool, we're going to do a vertical exit, then we're going to go to this, and then we're going to go to that. And if you actually watch the video of the jump, it's like the exit goes to shit, everyone's on different levels of the building, and then we break off and no one knows where everyone is, and it's a big shit show. You know, whereas it's like, okay, cool, like just go way more simple. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. How is it for you? I mean, it's different. It's different with the tunnel and working in the tunnel. How's it been for you in terms of how many jumps have you got?
Like 130, so still super early days.
Yeah. How have you found, like, so when did you start skydiving? And sorry to just flip the conversation around. I hope that's okay, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested.
So I started like 2015. I did my AF or something, so years ago. But then I had to stop jumping because, because of my last job, I was an acrobat, and circus companies aren't super stoked on you going off and doing risky stuff. So I actually stopped jumping for a few years, and so a big part of working in the tunnel was being able to come back and start doing other things that I really enjoy, and skydiving is a big part of that. So.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, so it's really more just like trying to get back into it now, but working at the tunnel, doesn't give you as much time as you'd think to skydive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the trap, hey? It's the pussy trap.
Yeah,
so it's that expression, but yeah, it's the pussy trap, man. And like, and everyone says it. It's like you go there because like you want to fly more, and it can do the opposite. It can for sure enable it, but it can be tricky from everything I understand.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like, and especially weekends are a busy time. So, and that's the easiest time to jump. So yeah, it's finding that balancing act of trying to figure out how you can jump.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Hey, Sezzy, can you take the floor for like 30 seconds? I'm just going to run and grab a Corona. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, you can go get a drink. I don't know what to talk about, guys, so everyone can unmute and just talk amongst themselves.